Hello YouTube, zeroed in, and I've got some universal Black Ops tactics. I've been meaning to make this video for a while now, and I really haven't gotten the chance, but I think now is a good time to talk about uh, the kind of things that you can do in your game to drastically increase your kill-death ratio and just generally help you enjoy the game more. I personally enjoy the game more when I'm doing really well, and I think that there are 5 main things that you can focus on in Black Ops that will have a big effect on your kill death ratio. And I just want to talk a little bit about those today, and hopefully you guys can give me some feedback. Hopefully you've learned something from this. But the reason I didn't want to post gameplay to this is because sometimes I feel like you guys get distracted. I know I get distracted when I watch other people's gameplay and they're trying to talk about something relevant to the game, especially if it's important. I want to know more about what they're actually trying to say and really kind of get a grasp of it. So let's move on to what I actually want to talk about, these first 5 things in Black Ops that you can focus on. So starting off here, we have sound cues, visual cues, rhythm, position, evasive maneuvers, and then the last one I'm not going to get into today. This is the last one, perks, weapons, kill streaks, equipment, very specific things. Oftentimes, this is what I see other commentators who supposedly give tips and that sort of thing. They tend to focus more on number 6, which is, in my opinion, the least important of all of the subjects. The first 5 are universal regardless of what you're using, in my opinion. And I think they can make a huge difference in how you play the game. So let's start with sound cues. So these first 2 tips here are sound cues and visual cues, and which are pretty self-explanatory, but they give you the knowledge of where are the enemies going to be coming from, where are they currently right now. And that's really important to actually getting a decent ratio, because first of all, if you're not attacking the enemies then properly, then you're not going to get enough kills. And if you're just if you're just running around and getting you're getting surprised by them, you don't know where they are, then you're also not going to get a good ratio because you're getting killed. So use sound cues to know where the enemy is currently right now, and usually take a guess on where they're going to be. That doesn't necessarily mean get to where they're going to be and then just wait and camp for them. Really what I mean is try to engage them where they are right now. You can be a little more aggressive with this. First of all is gunfire and grenades. If you hear action going on in the center of the map or on one side, you'll hear a lot of gunfire and grenades. Try to head to that area. Oftentimes, even if your teammate has already taken down 1 or 2, there'll always be more. That's just kind of the way that the spawns work in this game. And so for whatever reason, you usually tend to find enemies grouped up together, bunched up together. So usually when there's 1 or 2, there's another one. If there's 3, then there's 4. That's usually the general rule that I've found. So you want to start with gunfire and grenades. That tells you the general direction of where the enemies are going to be coming from, where they are currently. And then once you kind of head over into that position, then you want to focus on voices. Oftentimes you hear the enemy's voices before you hear any sort of footsteps or that sort of thing. That can give you your second clue as to where they are more specifically. So really make sure that you know what the enemy team's faction is. Also, lastly, and probably most obvious, are footsteps and reloading sounds. If you hear footsteps, they're pretty much right next to you. So usually you want to get into an ambush position or something if they're coming towards you. If they're not, then go ahead and rush up on them and go ahead and take them out. So next here we've got visual cues, and this is also really important. Probably not as important as sound, but it also is somewhat important. You want to keep an eye on your minimap for red dots that light up. It is helpful when people do get spy planes, but I wouldn't rely on it too much. I also wouldn't rely solely on watching the red dots pop up when people fire on the minimap, because as you know, a lot of people use ghost, a lot of people use suppressors. So try to use sound more than anything else to locate where enemies are, but visual cues can also be a good thing once you're kind of in mid-range towards moving into the general position of the enemy. Usually the enemy team will have a whole side of the map or one big section where they all are, And once you're roughly to halfway, you're right there. Some of the visual cues can really help tell you exactly where they're coming from, and you can also move into position and then take them out offensively that way. So there's one good way. I know that seems really obvious, but a lot of people, if they're rushing or if they're playing stealth, that sort of thing, they forget that, oh, hey, there's red dots popping up all around me. Maybe I should counterattack some of these guys. It's always a good way to help increase the amount of kills that you've got. And oftentimes, if there's a red dot that pops up right next to you when someone's firing, that's almost a free kill for you. Just make sure that you be a little bit careful and watch for claymores, watch for, because sometimes people will bait you into doing that. It's not a surefire method, but oftentimes it can really help you out. So keep that in mind. This is another very basic tip, and it's pretty self-explanatory, and that I just call it rhythm, and that's basically as you're counterattacking, make sure that you catch the enemy in the reload. So try to attack them right after they've fired. Usually you'll get them just as they're reloading, and so even if there's another teammate behind them, you should be able to take out the guy who's just firing no problem, and then immediately start engaging the other guy. So this seems pretty obvious, but I know that a lot of people tend to forget this one. It also goes hand in hand with visual cues and counterattacking, that sort of thing. So I did just want to mention it here. Now, after you've moved into position, it's important that you either ambush them by sitting and waiting for them to come by. Now, you have to make sure that they are actually heading in your direction. So that's part of where visual cues and sound cues come from once you're actually in position. Actually, what I mean by in position is basically right up on the enemies or right with the enemies. So either ambush them or assault them by attacking from angles that they didn't expect you to be there, or flanking. Flanking doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to hit them on the side or the back, but basically when I use that term, what I mean is attack them where they don't expect you to be coming from. Basically, if your whole team is coming from one direction, then attack from a different direction. Don't just move with your team. You can move with your team across the map, but don't attack with your team. Oftentimes that'll get you killed because the enemy will start flanking you. So this is just something to keep in mind. Also, if you're going to go the ambush route, which is typically more effective with stealth and that sort of play, make sure you use cover to the max. Make sure that you're always behind cover if that's the way you want to go, because even if they don't see you at first and you start shooting, typically with suppressed weapons you don't have as much damage, so you need to make sure that if they do fire back at you that they have a very small target to hit you from. Oftentimes when you fire, even with a suppressed weapon, and another enemy's going to know where you just fired from, or they're going to see you, or something bad is going to happen. Now it's important that after you make a kill that you keep yourself alive, so you keep your kill streaks going. So here are some basic evasive maneuvers that you can do. It depends on what happens, either if you're spotted or you're caught out in the open, but if you're spotted by by the enemy's teammate, or if they started firing at you just after you've killed that one guy, then go ahead and either throw your tacticals and then in combination with a frag. I prefer frags just because they tend to roll towards an enemy, and they also kind of keep them at bay. People are reluctant to run past frags, and if they do, then you know that they're in a position where they immediately have to move. So they'll be running instead of aiming down their sights, and then you can just wait and hit them as they come around the corner. If you're caught out in the open, try to go prone. That's your best bet. If you really have no cover and you're caught out in the open, then to be honest, you probably didn't move correctly. But every now and then it happens. So just keep that in mind. That's something that can really save your life. It has a lot of times with me. So, but basically, after you make a kill, you definitely want to get behind cover and then just start back at sound cues. Start listening for more sound cues on where to head next. So just to wrap this up here, I've got one last tip for you guys, and that's basically just to ask yourself, after every time you've made a kill or every time you've cleared an area of the enemies that were there, make sure you ask yourself, okay, where are they now? because that's the area you either want to head, or that's the area that you want to make sure that you're facing. You want to make sure that you at least know where they're coming from. It's not enough just to say, oh, well, they'll be spawning from here. At least make sure that you know what general direction they're coming from. We already talked about how to know that. Basically, with sound cues and visual cues that you get from the game without any sort of help from spy planes or your teammates or anything like that. You don't need any of that. If you just focus on knowing where they are, where they're going to be, once you have that knowledge, then you can use things like the rhythm of attacking them, what position you're going to attack them from, and then backing out after you've attacked them. These are all, it's basically a three-step process. You have to know where they're going to be, or know where they are, attack them from angles where you're not going to get killed, and then back out before you do get killed, and then just keep repeating the process. That's basically how a lot of YouTubers do it. That's how I do it, and I haven't seen anyone else explain it this way. I know it seems pretty obvious, but some of these basic tips are honestly pretty easy to forget when you're actually playing the game. But I'm telling you, if you master them, you really can bring up your kill-death ratio. So just try to focus on one thing at a time. I would say definitely try to focus on the first tip, which is using sound cues to locate the enemies. At least that way, you don't necessarily need to know where each and every one of them is like you have a blackbird up, but just make sure that you know what general direction you should be heading on the map. That way you're never wasting your time or getting killed. So that's it, guys. Let me know if these helped you at all. In the future, I'll have another video where I discuss perks and weapons, kill streaks, equipment, all that good stuff, but I feel like that's not really as important as some of the stuff I talked about in this one. So really try to focus on this stuff, and you guys will be golden. Thanks a ton for all of your support. I will have more videos up shortly. I've got another like 3 videos coming up. So make sure you check those out, and let me know if you liked them. Thanks, guys.